Yes, I am, thank you.
Okay. I'm going to call the September 7th planning board meeting to order, 7 p.m. The first order of business is the approval of minutes. You look at them?
I did, I didn't see it. Didn't say it.
All set.
Yeah. Move approval.
A second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Appointment of chairman and vice chairman. Everybody join at once.
Would that be something appropriate to let ride for a few meetings until this particular board gets their normal complement?
That's,
Just raising this an issue as a suggestion.
Is
Again,
this the
I
full
mean-
board?
one more full-time and one alternate.
Yeah.
Well, the only person on this board who has the experience to go down and check this properly is Jack. The question is whether Jack, being the codes officer, is a conflict of interest as well as being the head of the planning board. I mean, ethically speaking, so I'm sure there's no RSA against it or something like that, but given it will be scrutinized, that is the question. Nothing against Jack whatsoever, but
I think that that's a reasonable concern. And having said that, to temporarily run the board, I don't see as a particular issue. Now,
Can I ask someone outside this about what happens in this case? Who
Yeah.
deals with this a lot?
Yep.
Mike?
I don't see anything
Is there
wrong
is there a conflict with it or?
That I'm not certain about. If there's an RSA that precludes you as code enforcement.
There isn't, I
officer,
can't be
but-
on the zoning board, but the planning board I
Yeah.
can be on.
So, it's just the perception, and
Exactly.
that's how,
Yeah.
how it was raised.
I think we let it go a couple of meetings until we have the other two people and then see what happens, if that's all right with the rest of the board.
good with me.
no objection.
Okay. What's this C, Leanne?
The what? The C?
Yeah.
Eastern Bank?
Amendment of a
Oh,
revocable stamp.
yes, okay. Sorry, I forgot. You jumped over CIP. Okay, so this is more of a formality. What this is, especially for the new members, Graymont has a subdivision
Yeah.
on Union Wharf Road. There's a security or
Yeah,
a bond, a financial
Yeah.
security held, and it's with Walpole Cooperative Bank, but
Mhm.
Eastern Bank holds that.
okay,
So they're renewing it because they haven't completed
right,
the improvements 100%, so they're still keeping it in place, and that's all this
like
is to renew.
59,000, something like that, or?
Yeah, it's just to renew for a period of 1 year.
Yeah.
So, I just need you need your signature because you're vice chair. Thank you. That's complete. For the record, do you want to just table the appointment to the CIP as well? Because you
Oh,
only were
yes, I'm
talking
sorry,
about.
yeah, 'cause that member isn't here today, that will possibly be the CIP rep, so.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Mike, if you want to come up and have a seat here. But before we, so to refresh the planning board memory, there was a cost detail for the project. So I made a copy for everybody so that they can refer to it as Mike is going through it. It outlines not only the cost, but what the actual scope of the project would include. They've also given you, back in, I believe, June, you have this little copy of an email where this
Yeah,
board,
June 30th,
this board discussed what they may want to seek additional information from LRPC in different areas. Mainly that was, I think primarily the land use chapter
In
that
September.
we related to.
The September one, September 7th?
That's the date of the email. I just
Yeah,
emailed
yeah,
it to you today.
Right.
That's an excerpt from the minutes.
Yeah, this one here, yeah.
Yes, so that's a reminder email to the board that was here at the time of that meeting, that you wanted to talk to LRPC about including in the larger scope now of the, and I think that's,
Does Mike have a copy of that?
he had it in his email, but I can give him this if you want it. Yeah. Actually, here's all, and you have that, correct? Okay. All right.
So where to begin? Leanne sent me a copy of the Historic Resources
Mhm.
and Cultural Resources chapter. I read through that this afternoon. I thought it was well done. I only had a few grammatical suggestions, I guess. It was more commas than anything else, is my recollection, having read it just a few hours ago. The other thing I would say beyond that, and maybe this is covered in item 6 on our scope of services, I'm not sure. I think we should go back and reflect on it. In the recommendations section, and it's the same in the cultural and historic resources as it is in the recreation chapter or element that we put together. It's just a bulleted list of recommendations. I think the one for the recreation was pretty extensive. We had recommendations and then other considerations on top of that. Typically, what you as the planning board are going to want to see in the final product is who, how, and when. An implementation schedule that actually identifies potential monetary resources if they're needed, who the responsible party is, a time frame, those types of things. And so that would be my suggestion for any of the chapters, or if you want to wait until the end, the final product, make sure that you have something along those lines. I think it's most helpful for the community and the planning board as well to be able to track your way through this. You're probably going to want to review these things on a semi-annual basis or an annual basis. And that matrix will be able to guide you through that process. You can check things off, move them around, reprioritize along the way. So I'm not certain, looking back on this, I referenced item 6, if that would be part of our responsibility or if that was a responsibility of the planning board to pull the recommendations from each of the chapters together and put a matrix in place.
So you put that a 6, but under A probably? Which you have the 24 hours to do that one, you think?
Actually, the letter A was, the way this thing was scoped out initially is that we would develop background information. It wasn't a
Right.
full chapter. It was enough supporting information and detail that the planning board could say, okay, this makes sense to incorporate these items into a chapter. And then through your comment and any public comment that you had, we would make revisions and finalize that. And so I think initially it was talked about that there would be a format that's used for every item that's developed, chapter if you will, and that we would have a responsibility in putting that in final form. But when we modified the scope, it got modified a couple
It
times.
did, yeah.
And I think that went by the wayside in favor of the local volunteers being responsible for that effort.
Right.
So, you know, to the extent that any of these elements, that there's feedback from the planning board or the public, I see that as being the item in A,
Yeah, okay.
that we would go through and make revisions. If you
Yeah.
needed clarification on a point that was being made, we could do that.
Okay.
And that's really the way it went with the recreation chapter. We created a draft working with the rec director,
Yeah,
and we submitted that to the planning board for their review, and we were prepared to incorporate any comments. We got a little feedback along the way, and we made some revisions along the way, but it wasn't a very heavy lift.
right.
Can I ask clarification?
Go ahead.
Okay, so this number 6, are you talking about like master plan implementation matrix? Is
Yes.
that- Okay, so I'm not so sure, I mean, I actually developed a matrix for this board,
Good.
gosh, years ago.
Right,
And we were reviewing it annually or every other year.
right.
So I actually have a template for it and can use it. And the chapters that we're reviewing have the recommendations following it, you know, after all of the
Yes.
body of the text. So I can easily, I mean,
That's great.
do
I
the
think-
implementation matrix. 'Cause
Yeah,
I
and
think
I-
I'd rather you focus on stuff that I don't have the skills for.
Right.
That's great. I just wanted to make sure that
Is that-
I have my bearings in terms
Right.
of what we're saying we would
Yeah.
do here, and that was my recollection as well, is that when we revised the scope, it was left to the community to do
Right.
that. Whenever I read a chapter, I mean, that's the standard feedback that I provide, to the extent that you put it in a matrix
Mhm.
that Leanne has developed, it's a good thing, and it's a useful tool long term.
I mean, it wouldn't hurt for you to review it, just so I'm on task. And, but I think as far as developing it and spending that time, I think having LRPC work on like the land use and the
Right.
floodplain and stuff that I don't have time and I
Absolutely.
don't have
And I think that matrix can be pretty straightforward. We're working with the town of Moultonborough right now on their master plan, and we've broken it out into goals, objectives, strategies, and tactics. And so that gets pretty intensive when you do that, but to me, the nuts and bolts are what's important. A timeline, a responsible party, and some indication if it requires funding, where that would come from, if it's a CIP item, town
Right.
warrant,
Yep.
you're gonna bond it, whatever the case may be.
So what sections do you have done, Leanne? Now you were typing. Put some stuff together.
So we have a new chapter that we broke out, which is the cultural and historic.
Correct.
Then we have the natural resource chapter, which is
Which is here.
natural and scenic. And then, which was combined. And then the rec chapter, and then I have information that I received from Steve Brinzer regarding the population and economy or economic part of the chapter 2,
Yeah,
which I believe there's gonna have to be additional information from LRPCs, you know, either your regional plan or your resources.
Okay.
But I didn't do the chapter because I was hoping that
They
maybe
do the
LRPC.
Yeah, they do the regional plan every year.
Right, so if I give him that information, he could compile it and incorporate it, like integrate it into what he has.
Correct,
So,
That's it.
but the land use chapter is the big one.
right, and that's the new email that we got today, that's part of the land use we want to try to.
Yeah, so, well, he has that information.
Right,
So the land use is gonna be a big one that we're really gonna need to fall back on and have support from LRPC.
yeah,
And then while LRPC is addressing that chapter and a couple other things maybe, I'd like, either tonight or the next meeting, I'd like to go through the natural and scenic resources chapter. So then they'll have another chapter to just, you know, review like they did with the cultural and historic. get some feedback. But while he's working on the land use chapter, which is really big, then I can focus on contacting the library, the agricultural commission, and start, because I haven't even touched base with either of them, which is what I'd like my efforts to go towards while he's working on that.
Yeah, how close you and
We're struggling because there's really nothing specific in the original survey on agriculture. And a lot of the stuff that we've come up with out of that is similar to the scenic stuff that the Conservation Commission has done. So we tried to look at what Wolfboro had, we didn't get much there. We looked at the regional plan, didn't get a whole lot there. I mean, we're just, yeah, we're having a hard time.
Is it something that you might address in the, did you say chapter 2 is economic?
Historic resources.
No. In the old master plan,
Yeah.
chapter 2, I believe. Oh, actually, yeah, I'm not sure. Hold on.
Maybe something that you could address there, or in the land use.
Housing and
chapter.
economy.
I think either one of those. There is an economic component to it, but, you know,
Not-
the land use where
It's not a big economic component. There is some in town. But there's some things like composting, you know, things that haven't been addressed anywhere that we want to incorporate.
So here's a thought process. Are you aware of communities that have a strong agricultural commission that's doing some of the kinds of things that you're...
That's why we tried to look at Wolfboro, and it just didn't seem to translate into their master plan. So,
Right, but I guess what I'm saying is there are other communities besides
Yeah.
Wolfboro, so maybe one of those communities would have something in their master plan that at least
yeah,
would give...
not locally,
some-
that's
No.
what surprised us.
It's
We've
further
got
down
to,
south.
we've got
Yeah.
to get further out.
Yeah, we'll take a look at,
Deerfield or something.
take a
like
look
that.
at Lee,
Okay,
right? I know, I'm aware they have an active something going on there. I don't know any of the details, but other than, you know, they seem to be pretty visible.
okay.
I know Hollis is a big
Hollis,
ag
okay.
one.
Yeah. Yep. So.
Yeah, I
and
tried to
again,
get
Like
online
the
and,
State Department of Agriculture. they probably
If we
have
can look at somebody else's
Extension.
information
Yeah.
that may give us a blueprint as to kinds of things
That's
we
what-
want to pursue.
that's what we're hoping for. We
No.
did,
UNH
Pointless to
extension.
me.
I've already talked to some
Yeah.
of those folks, yeah.
they do have an agriculture commission in Wolfboro, and
Right.
whether that work of that group is tied in with their master plan or not, I don't know. But
Yeah,
It might be
I didn't see much translation there. They're focusing, they've got more, the stuff they've been doing lately is with economics that are actually in money more so. That's not the focus here. It's
Right.
small, either just personal use or farmer's market type. That's what most of it is in town. One of the things we wanted to look into was preservation of historic agricultural lands, either as agriculture or the scenic component, which we did get that out of the original survey. But we don't know where the community is on agriculture because it wasn't in the survey. You know, as a committee, we know what we like,
And when we
but
go through public meetings and that sort of thing, that may be an opportunity to,
yeah.
you know, take a whack at that.
I
and
mean,
get it-
there are, last year at the Christmas fair that everybody in town's involved in, there's a lot of individuals that make soap or little things like that. It's not organized. And so we know that we want to get some kind of directory. I mean, we know where we want to target what we're doing to help people, but as far as translating some of that into the master plan, that's where we're not real sure. Barn preservation, things like that, which is already available
Right.
in town. So
Well-
we're open to suggestions.
Everybody likes agriculture on a small scale
Right.
or on a pretty scale. recreational scale, I don't think anyone in Tufton Borough would be happy if you had 600 head of cattle that all of a sudden showed up on a piece of property, because real agriculture is not pretty or scenic or fun.
And most of town doesn't lend itself to that anyway,
Sure.
because of the soil conditions. Some people are trying to bring back what was a farm, but on a really small scale. Most of it's personal use.
Right.
Adjacent towns have bigger stuff than we do. We just don't have the stuff like Wolfboro and neighboring towns to that direction that raise cattle and chickens and big time. I mean, it's not really big time, but it's a lot bigger than anybody does in town.
Right. I mean, but if you start rolling upstate New York agriculture through
Yeah.
there, yeah, there, people.
I don't see that as, it's just, I would be surprised. I do know somebody that's trying to do horses. They've asked some questions about it, I don't think they know what they want to do, so. But like you say, that might fall under the pretty category.
Right. So,
Can we put it that way? I think that would be
a
fun.
a little bit of that, I think, is probably gonna be a subsection of something else, it won't be its own chapter, I think, so we'll just get a little bit in now and then.
Some places it's under the same as the natural resources. So we don't really care where it is.
Yeah.
We just want to get a better handle on how to get where we're headed into it. So I'll look at some of the other stuff.
Okay, we're almost. So how much can you do for what we have left for money, put it that way?
Well, that, I'd have to go back and check. We have some starts on different chapters. I didn't have the chance to talk to the bookkeeper and see where we
Yeah.
stood on the hours.
I don't know if you know, Leanne.
Well, I have what's remaining in the budget, but I don't know what it's gonna take. And
Everything that we've paid hasn't been used up, that's right.
it has not been used up. Is that what you're asking?
Right.
Correct. It is not. I think there's like 4,000 something. Hold on. I can get you the total. Master plan review, there's 41,30,36 available.
Left on the original?
Mm-hmm. Yep. But with the expanded scope of services.
Correct, it's gonna
it's-
change, that's why I can't.
Correct, but that's what the balance is right now.
Right.
So we just need them to tell us how much it would cost to finish it with the expanded scope of services.
And we gotta give them what we have, so they know what they have to finish. What we have done already, they don't have to do homework.
Correct.
And they're gonna review it and all
And he has the
that.
list, but I did question number 3 on the cost detail. Because we combined the natural resource chapter, which natural and scenic resources, I don't believe there's been any any work done on that.
No, there
So
hasn't.
this might be an area that we might be able to play with the 26 hours,
Yeah.
because I'm actually going to provide that to him for feedback. And then there may be a little work after that, but I don't believe there will be 26 hours worth,
Right.
since it's already been written by the Conservation Commission. So I think we've got some play in that. And then the historic resources, the Conservation Commission provided, which you read today, recommendations. So I'm not sure,
No,
I don't think that you need to draft so that's 8 hours too, so there's a couple areas that I think have room to move within this cost detail.
Yeah,
But we definitely need to, there is one part, which I had emailed to you, the natural resource, with the FEMA.
correct.
I'm
yeah.
gonna need help with that, and from you,
Okay.
from yours. So, like I said, so that, will definitely be,
Would it make sense if
highlighted.
I just kind of redid the scope,
yes.
sent that
Yes.
to you?
Mhm.
You can make sure it's got all the contents that you're interested in us working on, and then we'll go from there to finalize it.
Yeah,
No.
we're kind of bouncing all over the place, we weren't.
Right. So,
And what is your timeline?
well, we need to submit the budget, I believe, by the 29th of September, and we do meet in 2 weeks on the 21st. Would you be able to get us a draft scope
Yes.
and cost details so that we can discuss it that
Before the
night?
21st.
You'd have to send them over what you have
Mhm.
already, the matrix you have already set up.
Yeah, I
You'd have
won't,
to
but
see.
that's the end product. You
Yeah.
take all the, you take
Yeah.
all the chapters and the goals and objectives
just
and
put it
you put it
together.
into a matrix.
It
That's
sounds
the,
like you're gonna work on that.
that's the last thing. Correct.
Okay.
That's the last thing that'll get done with this project.
So I guess one question in my mind to rework the scope, are you adopting chapters individually at a public meeting of the planning board, or are you doing these together in groups, or are you waiting all until the end? Because we did have
We have
time.
we have two public hearings, right?
Yeah, well, there was mention of that possibly being a possibility.
Right.
I would get it all done.
I would get it all done and do it as once, and then if we get feedback and it has to be changed, we can make a few changes and then do another one. But to do a little at a time, it'll be too many public hearings, and you're gonna get the same 4 people show up.
Okay. And is there a target for that? Do you have a date in mind for a completion date?
ASAP.
It was,
Let's get this off our plate.
I mean, by town meeting
Too much.
for the hearing, and then, what do you think, Bill?
I think if we had it ready to go at town meeting, all done, that would be great.
Right.
But
But it can't be all done because we're gonna get more money, most likely, so,
you're gonna get what?
more money
Yeah,
for next year's budget,
Right.
so. But I think we got
Right.
public hearings, and everything's about that, and then the right at the end for after town meeting, so.
what I would hate to see us do is hurry up at the end and
Correct.
rush the final product. You know, the whole process has gone along for a long
Right.
time, but I think we've got to start where we're at and say, here's where we're at, here's what needs to get finished, get it finished, go through the public input hearing process, work forward from there, so that what we end up with is a quality product and not, oh, everybody's tired of working on it, let's get it done, and so we throw it on the shelf and it can collect dust again, because if all we end up with is something that collects dust, you know, the effort that everybody has put into it is just pretty much for naught. I mean, it's like, we're just checking a box so we
Right.
have something that's current. If it's not a document that we can work from going forward, that'll help us.
Thank you.
So, for
That's,
the-
that's why on the goals is these few things here on that new email, just to incorporate a little bit. Just to make the land use part a little bit more user-friendly somewhat. And that is, you know, obviously part zoning, but at least you can get in there a little bit.
Okay, so it looks like the bulk of it is the land use chapter with
Yeah.
an element with these items included in that. And then some review on the work that you're doing and providing comments back, which is not a lot of time.
Right. And Leanne has a bunch of stuff already, correct, that you can get to them? Aren't you writing one chapter, or putting stuff together?
yes, yes. So he's gonna, I assume.
Sounds like 2 chapters need some,
Well, you've already reviewed the culture and historic, you just gotta get me the grammatical changes, then that can be done. And then I'm going to, after this board reviews that chapter, I don't know if they're actually gonna review it tonight or take it home, now that they have a hard copy and review at the next meeting. But I would say within 3 weeks, or within 2 weeks from tonight, the latest, you'll receive that one to review.
Okay.
Then those will be two
And what's the
completely done.
FEMA work?
That's part of this,
Okay.
which,
So it's a
and you
little
can
bit
take
more.
this,
It's true.
it's, we did update the FEMA section, but there's one area, and you can take this with you. Okay, so floodplain actually. So section 3.313 floodplain, this has all been updated. But this, the new floodplain map
Okay,
and effects on development.
all right.
So it's that section,
Well, I have the new floodplain maps.
but digital version and stuff, do you
I
have
don't
them?
know, I just have, it's
Exactly.
actually the old map, so it's superimposed Google Earth over it's all this.
Mm.
Okay, well,
There's no change to speak of.
well, if there's no change, then I guess we can leave that map, but I'm not making that call. I need a
Correct.
professional to tell me that this map is still current. So that's what I need. I need you to review it in total, real quick, and then just attack that for me if you could.
All right.
How's the watershed plan that LRPC is working on getting incorporated into the master plan?
It's not yet because it's not ready.
Well, I understand it's not done, but, I mean, recreation based on water is a big thing for our community, and that should somehow be accounted for in our master plan going forward.
It could be into the goals, under the.
And the
section.
objectives
And the objectives of
would
the
be
section.
to implement
Implement.
the recommendations of the watershed plan, which, but, I mean, we can't incorporate the information because it hasn't been put
No,
together.
but we
But we
could
could definitely make
have
it part of
something,
the,
a commitment to it.
yes.
Yeah,
well,
that'll be the
we-
objective, each chapter's gonna have an objective at the end.
Yeah, we
Some of
will
these are-
add, once that gets going, because obviously this is gonna be a few months, and we should have a final approval, because I know it's all, the state says, yeah, it's going through, but we'll have a scope of what that watershed plan is, and we'll include like a paragraph addressing that is currently being worked on, and the goal for that, or the objective would be to implement the recommendations of that once it's completed.
Once the master plan is completed and voted on and accepted,
Mhm.
can we add to that in subsequent, or just as an addendum, or what happens with that?
Well, it's supposed to be looked at every year
Mhm.
and somewhat revised, but it's not rewritten, so I think you can make addendums to it. Is that true?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There are just any changes that you would agree upon would be voted on by the planning board at a public hearing. It's a revision to whatever chapter where the content is needed.
And it would seem to me that if that goes on along the way, then the next time you come up to the 10-year
Yeah,
point,
it
it's
should
like,
be
it's
easier.
a much easier thing to deal with. Yes, you know,
The analogy is like painting a house.
Exactly.
When you get done doing it and you've expended all your energy over the course of a summer, you say,